One of Rembrandt's last and finest paintings hangs in the fine museum and art gallery, the Hermitage, in St. Petersburg. Entitled The Return of the Prodigal Son, it shows just one scene from the story of the return of the prodigal as told in Luke's Gospel. Painted in Holland in 1668, it eventually became part of Catherine the Great's collection in 1766. In the painting we see three key characters and one or two shadowy figures in the background. On the left, kneeling down, is the younger son, the prodigal, who after a time of riotous living came to himself and decided to return to his father, asking for permission to live as one of his hired servants. And just notice the state of his clothes. It's been a long journey, and his clothes are dusty and torn, and he has no hat. One sandal is on, and the other off, but they're both falling apart. He kneels and rests his shaven head on his father's chest, asking for forgiveness. Behind the prodigal son and leaning over him is the waiting father. The parable tells us that he was out looking for his son and welcomed him back with compassion and organised a special celebration for his homecoming. And in this painting we have a wonderful image of the Father's unconditional forgiveness, love and compassion. The Father leans over to embrace his Son in the joy of his return, and his hands rest on the young man's shoulders. One hand, the one on the right, is strong and muscular. The one on the left is more feminine and tender. But it is the face of the Father which so beautifully expresses the compassion, forgiveness, understanding and quiet joy with which he welcomes back his son. Finally, there is another figure in this painting which needs our consideration. The elder brother who stands on the right, aloof from and angry about all that was going on. He stares in disapproval at the welcome his brother is receiving and complains bitterly to his father. But such is the nature of the Father's unconditional love and forgiveness that it embraces the elder son as well. Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. And this gives us an important insight into the nature of divine being, of unconditional love, which is able to hold together the opposites, the good and the bad, the dark and the light, the sinner and the saint. The close embrace that the Father gives to his returning Son reminds us of the love of God, which takes the form of mutual indwelling. As the Father has loved me, said Jesus, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. It is a divine flow which begins with God's love for us, and which enables us in turn to love God with our whole heart and mind and strength, and our neighbour as ourselves. It is a mutual indwelling, which is illustrated so beautifully in this painting, as the two figures embrace each other and become one. This painting reminds me of a statue I used to see often when travelling to East Grinstead for treatment in the corneoplastic unit at Queen Victoria Hospital. During the Second World War, this hospital was renowned for its treatment of wounded pilots who often had suffered horrendous burns, and it became a centre of excellence for plastic surgery, which it still is today. And the man responsible for this work was the surgeon, Sir Archibald McIndoe, and just recently a statue has been erected in East Grinstead along the route he used to take every day to the hospital. I was looking at it again recently and was struck by its resemblance to this painting. It shows Archie McIndoe standing, both his hands resting on the shoulders of an RAF officer in uniform who is slumped down in front of him, his face scarred and his burnt fingers unable to hold properly the stick he needed to support himself. The two hands are so similar to those in Rembrandt's painting. But what is most striking about this statue is the same look of intense compassion on the doctor's face, beautifully portrayed by the sculptor whose own father had been treated by McIndoe, and it is his own father's hands which have been sculpted in the statue. And the one thing that McIndoe's patients always said about him was that he gave them hope. Disfigured as they were, he encouraged them to walk in the town and join in social events, and East Grinstead became known as the town that did not stare. McIndoe gave these young men hope that they would recover, that they would be able to have families and live a relatively normal life. Jesus said, "Love your neighbour as yourself." And this really only becomes possible as we allow ourselves to be loved by God and let that love flow through us to others. And this spirit, seen in both the return of the prodigal and also in the statue of Archie McIndoe, is beautifully expressed in the poem Love 3, written by George Herbert, which tells of a guest who feels unworthy to be present at a meal and wants to serve, only to be told by Love, the host, that he must let Love serve him. Love bade me welcome, yet my soul drew back, guilty of dust and sin. But quick-eyed Love, observing me grow slack from my first entrance in, drew nearer to me, sweetly questioning if I lacked anything. "A guest," I answered, "worthy to be here." Love said, "You shall be he." I, the unkind, the ungrateful, "Ah, my dear, I cannot look on thee." Love took my hand and smiling did reply, "Who made the eyes but I?" "Truth, Lord, but I have marred them. Let my shame go where it doth deserve." "And know you not," says Love, "who bore the blame?" "My dear, then I will serve." "You must sit down," says Love, "and taste my meat." So I did sit and